Meanwhile, donations are pouring into the Democratic Party and Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign after President Joe Biden quit the presidential race and endorsed Kamala Harris. Collectively, they've raised over $100 million. But Harris still needs to win the Democratic nomination at their upcoming convention next month. Well, does any of this change the scenario for investors? Well, let's put that question to Thomas Hayes from Great Hill Capital, who joins me now from New York. Thanks very much, Thomas, for your time here on Business Today. I'd just like to start by reflecting on what we heard from Kamala Harris, who was speaking just a short while back, and we were broadcasting that and talking about that. What are to be the likely reactions market-wise to what we just heard from Kamala Harris and how she's starting her campaign?
Well, Aruna Day, I think we saw a preview of coming attractions today. We've had this pretty violent rotation out of the Magnificent Seven, the large cap growth stocks, into small caps. And that was reversed over the weekend when we saw that Joe Biden was stepping down and Kamala Harris was taking the reins. And what the market said to that was, okay, it had been a foregone conclusion that probabilistically former President Trump would win in November. Now those odds are slightly narrowed. And as a result, we saw tech stocks back up. I do think this is a fake out counter trend rally, Aruna Day. And the reason is because this rotation is not just political. It's actually underpinned by a change in earnings composition. The earnings growth for the large cap tech stocks is decelerating, while the earnings growth for the small cap and cyclicals, the other 493 S&P components, is actually starting to accelerate.
Right. And it's still early, Thomas, but Kamala Harris, the Democrat favorite, is yet to really outline her economic vision. Are we likely to see economic policies being carried forward from before? Will investors have any concerns?
Well, it's going to be Biden part two. There will be no material change in the outline or the execution. What I think the market cares most about, empirically looking at the historic data, is are we going to have a mixed rule? Meaning, will the House and Senate and executive branch all be one party? The advent of Kamala Harris into the picture speaks to a probability that even if the Democrats don't win the executive branch, or the Republicans win the executive branch, it's no longer a foregone conclusion that it will be a sweep. And what the market's like, whether you have a Democratic president or a Republican president, is gridlock. They like to see checks and balances is kind of the culture of American politics and the markets. And stock markets in the US do better when one party does not control the executive, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. And I think what we saw with the change is that the probability of a sweep has narrowed, and the market kind of likes that.
Very briefly, Kamala Harris has previously worked with Silicon Valley, which has thrown support for Trump recently. We've heard Elon Musk. But will Harris's bid sway tech investors towards the Democrats, you'd say?
It's very hard to say. I think that people who have publicly made endorsements are probably going to stick with their public declarations and their monetary declarations. It certainly does move things in a kind of more centrist point of view, meaning there are now more options for people. They felt perhaps several days ago they had less options when they go to the poll in November. But the odds are still similar to what they were prior to the weekend. And this is early days. So we're going to see a lot of change and a lot of movement in those polls over the next few months. As it relates to stock market performance, though, what the stock market wants to see is gridlock. So markets tend to like when politicians can do less, not more.
All right, Thomas Hayes, thank you very much for joining us here on Business Today.